Start. Hello and welcome to the first in a series of talks with artists, creatives and freelancers of all kinds on the question of what it means to live well as a creative in the world today. My name is Andrew Macklin. I'm an actor and a qualified career coach. I work with creatives of all shapes and sizes on the complexities of living and working to their best in the unpredictable but always passionate world of the arts. Joining me today to wrestle this topic to the ground is actor and comedy genius, if I dare say, Tom Edden. Tom, I know you will know yourself to a degree.
I do know myself, yes.
Many people working in theatre in London and indeed watching theatre in London will know your work. But if you'd permit me, for those who don't, in wherever they may be hiding, I might just read out a short snippet of some of your work today. In film, you've appeared in Kenneth Branagh's Cinderella, in The Wonderful Mr. Turner, directed by Mike Leigh, Star Wars The Force Awakens, directed by little-known J.J. Abrams. You'll run out of fingers when it comes to theatre. Your theatre work includes...
That's the film, though.
To date. Yeah. Your work in theatre includes work at the National Theatre, the Donmar Warehouse, Young Vic Theatre, Regent's Park. In the West End, you've enjoyed starring roles in Les Mis, the RC's production of Matilda, as well as Jamie Lloyd's production of Dr. Faustus, and recently, Cyrano de Bergerac. And if you've been watching theatre during the lockdown, you'll have seen Tom's Tony-nominated and Dramadesque award-winning performance in the National Theatre's original production of One Man, Two Governors. Tom, did I get pretty much everything in there?
That's it. That's the whole thing.
I mean, that's taken pretty much all of my lung capacity to get through that.
I feel very confident now, Andy. Thank you.
It's all accurate, as far as I can tell from the internet.
Yeah.
Of course, we know each other from the Salisbury Playhouse and a production of, was it Cinderella or Jack and the Beanstalk? I forget.
Both.
We did two of them, didn't we?
Yeah, we did Jack and the Beanstalk and Cinderella.
We did.
Back to back.
Yes. I mean, work is work.
2004?
God, I was going to ask. You've got a memory for dates, and I'm.
It's 2004. Yeah, 2004 was Jack and the Beanstalk, and 2005 was Cinderella.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Draw a veil over that.
Draw a veil over that. I was, I guess, particularly interested to talk to you on this topic of what it means well to live well as a creative.
Yeah.
Because I think it's, as we've said before, as we've talked before, it's something that I think actors particularly, but all creatives maybe deal with and think on maybe a daily sort of basis, and can, I guess, define maybe some of the big changes people make in their lives around it. First off, I mean, do you or would you define yourself as an artist? And if not, what would you define yourself as?
Depends how broadly you wanted to sort of say it. No, I think the most succinct definition would be to say an actor. And I think that's quite a hard one, because I think one of the things that you come out of, or at least in the way that I did it, because of course it's not the same path for everyone, but the way I went into drama school and did a sort of traditional, training and on all that, there is that thing of how long before you can actually call yourself an actor. Mm-hmm. I mean, it becomes a slight crisis of confidence in if I think back to when we all graduated, and it was a sense of really being thrown into the void, mm-hmm. and of work and the world, and how will any of us get a job or get established, never mind sort of thrive. There was a sense that if you weren't getting paid for it, if you weren't doing it, could you actually say, oh yes, I am an actor? And I think, of course, you can, because I think it is something that you devote your life to. But I mean, when it's you and you're not sure what your path is going to be, work means an awful lot to you. I was lucky that I got a job pretty soon after I left. Not a big swanky job by any means. It was very hard work. It was like, you know, one of these vans touring Europe, one of these English-speaking theatre tours, you know, and it was not much money, but it was a really, really important job for me because it was the world, as it were, saying to me, somebody will actually pay you to do what you've said you want to do, and that really is rocket fuel. And it began it began to what's the word, really prove that thing that a lot of people tell you, that people always say, oh, it's not what you know, it's who you know, which is sort of there's a half truth in there. I think the truth in there is that I've certainly found the path of my career, to use that word, developing, is to do with relationships. Mm-hmm. It's who you meet, and it's the actors you meet, and they will then say, you know, I'll meet an actor who's been at it a little bit longer than me, and they'll say, oh, this job is happening, or this gig, and it'll be something I had no idea about. I'd be like, oh, okay, I'll write to them, I'll do this, I'll do that. So you can, you know, I can cherry pick my career and sort of, you know, feel pleased with myself that I've managed to do some very nice stuff and work with some very nice people. But that path, you know, to where I am now and to the things I've enjoyed in recent years, all started from that job. You know, I had a crappy little agent. It was a cooperative agency, you know. So I didn't even have an agent. We were working in this cooperative, you know, going into the office every 3 times a month or whatever it was, you know, and this job was great. I mean, I loved it. I had a whale of a time and traveled and played a great part. It was important to being earnest. But what was I saying? No, it really, you when you're that age, I think you take the meaning and the value from what's in front of you. What I didn't do was go, this isn't enough, I want more, and I want it right now. You know, my determination was more about going, okay, if this is a long game, then I want the next steps to be good, you know, and constructive, rather than going, oh, if I haven't got a Hollywood film by next year, I'll jack it all in. Do you know what I mean?
So, I mean, it sounds like that there was already at the start for you this sense of, this is going to be a longer journey, and so I'm going to sort of plan and take my time with it. Is that kind of?
Yeah, I had this I mean, my mind works very structurally. I'm quite a structural person. I like to feel that things are ordered and secure, which is why his career was such a strange choice for me. But I started out with the rationale that I'd given 3 years to a drama school training. And, you know, I was very lucky because I started in 97. So I was the last year that got grant paid, tuition fees paid. Literally 98 it stopped, and I started in 97. So I was very lucky from that point, because if I'd had to have paid tuition, I don't know. I dread to think. I don't know. Anyway, but I mean, I had student loans, obviously, but nothing like the size of, you know, a full tuition. But I'd given it 3 years, and I always thought in my head the rationale would be, I graduated at the age of 22. So I thought, well, I should at least try this for 3 years, because I put 3 years into the education side of it. So even if I do 3 years of getting no job anywhere, in my head, I'd structured the rationale that is at least what I should put into it. And then if it's all a horrific disaster and, you know, I'm a total pariah, no one will come near me. I'll have been what, like 25 or whatever. So, you know, I think there was a virtue to sort of going, okay, I've got my 20s to spend on this experiment to see if it works. And then I sort of extended it to the age of 30, and I said, if I can get to 30 and things are, I can look back and see that something has progressed, then I'll review, you know. but which I don't know if that's a particularly functional way to do it. It may have served me better to have a slightly harder, more aggressive determination. Maybe if I come out of drama school going, right, I don't want to wait till I'm 30 to see how I'm doing. I want to get where I want to get to right now. But that just wasn't the way I'm wired. I think I was a little more, not on the back foot, but just maybe a little, not even cynical, but just a sort of bit more pragmatic, maybe. Or, yeah.
I mean, to take a step back just before drama school and before launching into the profession in that Oscar Wilde tour, I mean, you mentioned about this rational way of thinking that seems to have worked, I guess, for you and seemed to have matched your pace and the way in which you'd like to kind of structure your thinking around work. But there's always a bit of I know we've spoken about this before, a bit of a tension between the rational logic thinking as applied to creative work and living and the kind of intuitive and instinctive. And they seem to often pull away from each other for a lot of people. And there's always a bit of a battle as to which is most important or which to be listened to. It's head and heart stuff, I guess. But when for you did you intuitively first know that you wanted to be a professional actor?
Well, that's a good question. I think it came. Well, it would have been around that time. I mean, I don't know if they do this anymore, but we had options. I don't know if kids still do options when you're doing. I think it's when is it after you do your GCSEs or when you're picking your GCSEs? Anyway, we had this whole thing. Did you do options?
Irish. I don't know what we did. It was a long time ago, but I never remember. I don't think there was.
Did you go to
choice.
School, Andy?
Yeah, for the same 3 weeks as everyone else. I mean,
fine. No, we had this thing called options, and it was this sort of, I don't know, it was to try and sort of, funnel all these adolescent minds into sort of trying to pick something. I think I was pretty clear that it's what I wanted to do. I suppose about 16. I was lucky. So I came from an area where I had a nice school, not like posh, like big Eton or anything, but just, I grew up in Guildford, which is a nice place to grow up. And I had a nice secondary school, good drama department, purely down to the fact there was a very, very passionate drama teacher. And I had two real passions. One of them was acting, which I did a lot of at school. And the other was drawing. I really loved to draw. And for the longest time, that's what I thought I would do. But I got to a point where I thought, actually, do I want my profession to be very insular and very private, which it would have been if I'd stuck with drawing? Or do I want it to be social? Do I want it to be about relationships, about and doing all these plays and going to all these theatre trips, which I was lucky enough to do? That was what was really turning me on, actually. And the drawing became more of a sort of private hobby, a private passion or whatever. And I was much more drawn to the option of acting. So I luckily, with my parents' support and with the support of my drama teacher, it was framed as a reality to me that if I wanted to try, I could try and get into drama schools and say to the world, I want to train and I want to be a professional actor. And I was as a lot of people are when they come to drama school, I was a big fish in a small pond, in my amateur groups and in the school plays, I was seen to be one of the people who was better at it than average, and there's a long conversation to be had, which is not this conversation, but there's a long conversation to be had about why it is that one actually becomes an actor, because I think there's more than one thing. I think you could tell the world, oh, it's because I just feel this passion and this talent is in me and I intuitively choose that, and that's this gift to the world. But then there's also, if you're frank with yourself, there's the thing that our ego responds to is status and prestige. And if you have been engaged in something that is giving you status and prestige, that if showing off to people, impressing people, making people laugh, all those things become coveted greatly by your ego, and you just think, I need to stick to that. because I can feel worthwhile if I can dazzle people into giving me their approval. If I can figure out how to do that and keep doing it, you know, and I think over the years and years of doing it, you start to filter out how much of that is actually useful to value. I think it's there. It's a thing. You know, people want attention and people want approval and people want to be told that they're doing well and that they're good and that all those things. And I you know, any actor who tells you that isn't an element of why they do what they do. It's not everything, but I'm pretty sure that's in there for a lot of people in all sorts of walks of life, I suppose. But with theatre, it's just, there's something quite demonstrative about it, you know.
I mean, it's definitely in there in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's definitely in
You're
there.
breaking up. You're breaking up.
I'm breaking up.
Was he on Sesame Street? Who's Maslow?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely there in sort of, you know, I guess humanistic psychology would say that, you know, beyond having food and shelter, some of the basic needs would then go to prestige to a certain degree. But I think
that is the trap. You know, you started, your question was about sort of having, I think, about the sort of that structural side, that pragmatic side, and where does the intuition balance? And I think it is, you know, another way to look at it is sort of archetypally is the balance between order and chaos. You know, you could say that your passion and all the things I've described about ego and that part of you that genuinely feels like you're put on earth to be a performer, which is authentic. There's something chaotic about that. You know, there's something, or at least intuitive, as you say, emotional, or whatever we want to say, something that isn't to do with order. And I think negotiating your way through all of the complexities of doing it professionally, doing it in the world, and all those sorts of things, for me at least, I've found that needs the balance of order in some respect. And the way I go to that was to sort of do a thing about time. Okay, if I spend 3 years doing this, or if I do it until I'm 30, etc., etc., etc. Now, that may not be a particularly good way to do it, because in a way, I think I built a sort of bit of a fence for myself, a bit of a boundary. I sort of said, oh, if I fail for 3 years and then get a job, that will be things going to plan. So it may have been that I didn't actually set big enough goals or allowed myself big enough dreams, the audacity to dream at the early stage. I was sort of willing to take small steps. But there may be something, I mean, I can look back now and go, well, that is what worked. That is what worked for you. You know, for some people, you know, they'll land a huge job and their life will change. But, you know, I felt instinctively that it would be something to do with small steps. And there may have been part of my own temperament that found that comforting, because it meant that I didn't have to ask too much of the world straight away, because that might have felt a little bit audacious. So, you know, if somebody's got more audacity than that, then good for them. You know, that could very well do better for them. See what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think you described really well there, that balance between order and chaos and finding ways to manage that. So when you describe that structure that you created to kind of give that balance to the chaos, to accept that anything could happen, but I'm going to work in this 3-year format. And yeah, as well with the idea of that audacity to perhaps think further and bigger or whatever. But it felt like, hearing you talk about it, it feels like you were in tune to a part of yourself that was saying, this for me at the moment is the best way of me going forward. And another thing, another word you used I quite like was, you know, that it was just the more useful way of going forward. Something you said that earlier on that struck me a little bit as being maybe uncommon in a lot of the stories that I hear, and a lot of what help talk about the beginnings of moving into the profession and choosing to go that way, is what sounds like a lot of support from your drama teacher and your parents. You mentioned about like how they framed it as a possibility.
Yeah.
I mean, how was that framed? Because it's it can be dramatically different to a lot of other people that would have had a lot of
No, and
authority.
I think that is, you know, I would never say that the good fortune that I've had and just to be able to make a living out of being an actor, you know, never mind whatever is to come, or, you know, I can't say that that was all self-generated, that creating that possibility, because you know, the support of my parents and this drama teacher who sort of really, you know, my parents didn't particularly, it wasn't that they particularly promoted my passion in it. We didn't go to the theatre together. They weren't particularly theatrical people. They didn't go to the theatre very often at all. It wasn't that, but they saw that it was something that I enjoyed, and allowed that, and gave that a lot of space and a lot of freedom. And I remember my mum, this is way back when, you know, looked in the paper and said, oh, I've seen there's an amateur drama group, why don't we look at that? And, you know, very much not just giving permission, but sort of helping to promote it and to nurture it. And I think in the beginning, just as a hobby, really. And I think they saw how much I enjoyed it and how, you know, without being egotistical, that I was good at it to a certain degree. So I think it was just natural when I said to them, actually, I'd like to give that a bash. They didn't give me the whole sort of, proper job bit. Partly because they'd both been working very, very hard as teachers all their lives and had done the proper job thing, and were saying, you know, it's served them very well, but it's like, particularly with my dad, he said, you know, got to the end of his career and he didn't enjoy his work. You know, it was hard. He worked hard all his life. Anyway, so I think they thought, well, actually, look, if you could, we can see that you're pretty good. If you could actually do this and make money out of it, like, go for it. So I was lucky that I got some thumbs up. And my drama teacher was just full of passion. She just educated me. You know, the drama department at our school, before she came there, they did like Bugsy Malone every 2 years, and that was it. When she got there, she was like, right, we're doing all 6 hours of David Edgar's Nicholas Nickleby, and then we're going to take you to the Edinburgh Festival with Mother Courage and Fear and Misery in the Third Reich. And we did the school play was Caucasian Chalk Circle. All these poor parents who were like, thought, oh, well, maybe we'll get Grease or something. And like, no, Good Person of Sitzman. It was kind of like, but it was a really good grounding in theatre education. And the drama department had trips to London, and also the English department did. I didn't do English at A-level. I sort of wish I had. But because they knew me, I could kind of sort of tag on to their drama trips to London. And a lot of those were to the National Theatre. So I had a real thing, something really clicked when I went to the National Theatre the first few times and saw these actors on stage. And I was like, that is what I want to do. I like the focus then became very clear. And I was very, very clear that when I saw what was going on at the National Theatre, how sort of bubbling it was, how full of life and full of creativity it was, I just was like, this is it. This is where I want to be, you know. Now, I'm lucky that is something that was available to me, because, you know, it was, and it really helped, because it enabled me to sort of to envisage the steps and where I wanted to go and all that. And it didn't seem a crazy thing to suggest to the world. Do you know what I mean? At that point, I had people who told me I was good. I, you know, had access to information and a sort of experience of where I wanted to get to, and yeah. So I'm very lucky, because obviously not everybody's in that position. So yeah.
I mean, I think there's something really important about seeing it as a real life actual thing in front of you.
Yeah.
I mean, there was one theatre company in existence in the city I grew up in, and there was something that enabled me to do it because I could see an office in the town that was a full-time theatre company. So there's something about that. But jumping forward, so you're
And,
at the,
that's, well, sorry to interrupt you, but that is what is so, that is when I can really, really obviously see the value in this word representation, which gets, used a lot. And it's true, like you do have to see a sort of version of yourself there that you could go, oh, that could be me in an alternate universe, or and anyway, yeah, that's beside the point. But I'm lucky that I didn't have to recalibrate my brain to go, but how could I get there? Me, like I'm not the right type of person. I have my own sort of doubts and lack of confidence, absolutely. But I was reflected back by the world, a possibility of going, well, I could do that. No one's going to, ask for my paperwork and go, wait a minute, where do you think you're going? Anyway, go on.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole different bunch of barriers to not having that.
Yeah.
Just as a mental jump to try and put yourself into the place of potentially. I mean, you describe sort of being at the National Theatre and being in this bubbling environment and the focus then kicking in. I mean, if you were to jump ahead again to that first tour when you left drama school,
yes,
what was most exciting to you about being an actor at that point?
Oh, it was all really exciting, actually. I think, well, that first job was really, really significant because, as I say, when I left drama school, I didn't have a conventional agent. I don't know why, it just didn't happen. Except for this cooperative agency that said, yeah, we'll have you, which is great. And then, there was just this guy called Peter Jukler, this director, who was attached to this American, who lived in Munich, who sort of did all these English-speaking theatre tours around Germany, but mainly theatre, not musicals, because, you have big musicals go to Hamburg and places like that. But this is very shoestring, sort of bog standard English repertoire that German audiences would want to see in English. And he made a point of seeing actors who had just left drama school, and really, took it upon himself to give people those first opportunities. And I went along to an audition with a bunch of other people, and he sort of put us through the ringer and obviously liked what I was doing. Oh, I loved it. It was so exciting because, 6 months away from England, which I'd never done, different city, 3 different cities a week. Yeah, it was a white van and we had to load it up in rain or shine and all that stuff. But, I look back on that now with great affection because it was, we were on the road. It felt like great freedom. It felt like the world had opened up, and those friends I still have that I did that with, we look back sometimes on the horrendous part of it with, we laugh about it now, but there were some great highs. I mean, the way they fund theatre in Germany is completely different to here. We'd turn up at a tiny little town and it'd have a huge theatre with massive permanent staff, and we'd sort of there'd be 5 stagehands waiting to move the set in, and we'd come out with a wheelbarrow and a couple of sort of stage rostrums and go, this is it, it's fine, it takes 5 minutes. And the place would be full. It'd be this like 900 seater and be packed for our little, and Port's Being Earnest show with a rug and 2 chairs, and it was great. Yeah, it was great. We felt great, and it was really exciting. A sense of freedom, a sense of everything coming out of, and I think as a sense of coming into adulthood, actually, a sense of all of those great links of education and mentors and teachers and parents, that this was now the moment that this is now you doing it. This is what everyone was pushing for and you were pushing for, and this is it. And if you can conduct yourself well and, do it with integrity, and then you're off, Yeah. I mean, that's the thing you can take from that. If I'd wanted to, I could have gone this isn't what I want to be doing. 6 months on the road, rain and shine and up all night and driving all night. And, I could have been really down on that. I would have been, I want to be at the National Theatre. I don't want to be doing this, but that, I think you're lost if that's your view on the world, just to see what isn't there. And I really chose to focus on that, on what I and those who'd supported me had created. And it was a beginning, it was a start, it was the first step.
I mean, that's something that is commonly forgotten, I think, for a lot of people in trying to move forward, is exactly where they currently are and what's already been achieved on that road. But I'm curious to know what you felt at that time when you were doing that show. What was your sense of what was possible for you career-wise going forward?
That's an interesting question, actually, because I think, I framed how I sort of viewed everything in a very positive way, and being sort of pragmatic and sort of this sort of structure I'd given myself, and being confident, but at the same time not being audacious. But I do think there was a negative part of my mind of not to ask for too much, or not to, that thing sometimes people say is that, well, don't hope for too much because then you won't be disappointed, that sort of thing. I think I did have a tendency towards that, of just slight, and I suppose what's behind that is a fear of saying to the world, actually, all that I want is this, and the world then going, no. Do you know what I mean? So I think I asked of the world little bits. So if I can just get that little job. But I think what I was doing in doing that, I did take everything that there was to take from it. So see what I mean? I might have been sort of taking little steps, but I was actually seeing each one as quite significant, if you see what I mean. But I think there was a part of me that maybe didn't, that perhaps wasn't audacious enough. Or could have been more audacious. There could have been more, I think at that point I saw, if you'd said to me then, in 20 years' time, someone will read back to you your CV and they'll say the National, the Drama, the Young Vic, and they'll say all the lovely things you said, I'd have gone, oh, well, what am I waiting for? Do you know what I mean? I should get on and behave like the person who can get in that door now. I think I was I don't think I was apologetic about my talent. I just was, I think I maybe a fear of, it's a bit obvious, but either a fear of rejection or a fear of being sort of proved to that your dream is too big. Because unless it's delivered right now, you could do you see what I mean? You could take that meaning from it. If I said, actually, my dream is this big, and then I'm sort of here, if I wasn't careful, I'd go, well, that's proof that this isn't happening. Do you see what I mean? And I don't know if that's making any sense, but
it is. I mean, it seems. I think what's clear from what you're saying is that sense of all or nothing, and that gap, that sense of, like you were saying, if I want to go for this one thing and the world says no to it, then what is left? And if my sights are so high, how can I justify these small moves, and being without that sort of goal is kind of.
I think I was probably, I think if I'm being honest with myself, I think I was holding that large-sized dream in there, but I wasn't really giving it voice, and because I think I as I said, I didn't want to do the all or nothing thing, because that felt quite stark. But I think what you can do is going, well, there is this big dream there, and I'm invested in building that. And I think when I did voice it, on those occasions that I did voice it, it became very powerful. And the example is when I'd finally got a professional job in London, which was sort of 10 years in. I did this musical in Drury Lane, did Oliver. I remember near the end of that, somebody said to me, what do you want to do next? and I sort of was in the dressing room, and because I'd done this job, it sort of, it was professional work in London. It was on the West End. I'd got a new agent, like actually a good functional agent. So I was feeling like, oh, this feels like a chapter change. I remember I said to I pointed across the river and I said, I want to work at the National Theatre. Like I really put it into, if you want to, I sort of manifested it. And but 2 months later, I got the job, One Man, Two Governors, and that was my National Theatre debut, Broadway. It was this big job that changed everything. So I think I wish in a way in the past I'd given myself permission to ask a little more openly of the world what I was actually maybe keeping a little bit secret and a bit safe.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we'll come to the move across the river into the National just in a second. But one thing that struck me there as you were talking that I think is uncommon maybe is when you were describing, if someone had said to me now or back then that I would be at this place, I was expecting you to say, I would have said, I don't believe you, it's nonsense. But your response was, oh, excellent, I can go and do it then. I can embrace this. And I think there is something that is, I don't know if it's rare, but there's something uncommon in that. I think that mindset that I haven't heard too often. I mean,
I think my problem was I didn't trust the world. I trusted myself. I knew I could do all that. I knew I was good enough to do it, and that if I was given the opportunity, I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to get that. But my doubt or whatever was this lack of trust that the world would be forthcoming with that opportunity. I thought, how do I get in? How do I, from where I am, how do I get in there? All these people succeeding, and whether they're the famous people or even the people that I idolized, that I could just see were really good working actors. And from where I was just like, how do I get there? Mm-hmm. How do I prove, how do I get promoted? Because other people promote you, whether you like it or not. There's a great deal one can do to self-generate, a great deal. And sort of use your own creative energies. But at the end of the day, in the kind of career I was looking to create, it would need people in positions of power to go, yes, and I don't think I ever doubted that if I was in that position and the part was right and it was something, that I would be good enough. I think I had this thing that I was just like, I'm not sure if I trust the world will be fair or go my way, or you see what I mean? So it's quite a dusty, dirty little secret in the shadows. And I think the fear of that being proved true may have been part of my slightly slow and steady strategy. It worked, but in terms of if we take stock, if this is a moment, and it's interesting with this lockdown, everything stopped. There's nothing going on, so I'm lucky. You do take stock and you do go, actually things did really change when I was 30, and I was able to feel like I'd established myself and build on that. I didn't have to prove quite so much to people and so on and so on, but it took a good 10, 11, 12 years to get to that position. Yeah.
And so there was the move then across the river to the National. And what did change? What changed in career? But also, I mean, there was this slow and steady movement, like you said, this slightly unsure person not wanting to ask permission, as you said, for the big dream, for what they felt they were definitely capable of. And then it seems like there was quite a change, and has been quite a change. And so, what was that, and how did you ease yourself into it?
Well, I think the change. I mean, you know, like all, you know, if one is looking at my career, which is 20 years to date, um, you know, the first 10 years was my 20s, and I was grafting away and doing small jobs where there were big gaps, and a lot of regional stuff, all this sort of touring stuff I was describing to you. And it kind of plateaued, but what was good is that I more or less kept working, but the gaps were just short or long enough to sort of question whether this was a going concern or whatever. I got to 30, and one of the jobs I got was this musical in the West End. It was Oliver, and it heralded a new agent, etc. You know, I was in the ensemble, I was understudying. It wasn't like a huge promotion in terms of my profile, but it certainly was in terms of being in the room with the top people. And anyway, out of that came this audition for One Man, Two Governors. I mean, this is a very roundabout way of saying that there was a lot of luck. There was a lot of luck. Mm-hmm. I think luck is a situation that you work to be in the presence of. I think there's a catchy phrase that describes that I can't remember. But, 90% perspiration or 10% inspiration, something like that. Anyway, so I found myself in this position where luck had a big thing to offer. I mean, the interesting thing was, you know, they were looking for someone who a physical comedian, and I was getting so sort of bored of sort of jobs kind of being a little bit too far apart that I took a stand-up comedy course. I thought, sod this, I'm going to try something else. Did stand-up comedy for a very short time. Only did about a dozen gigs. It was terrifying. But what was interesting about it is that off the back of it, I had these auditions for Oliver to understudy Fagin, and I, you know, big frightening panel, Cameron Mackintosh, Rupert Gould, all these big directors, big decision makers. But in my head, I was like, I've just done a 7-minute set in Wimbledon in front of a room of 30 rugby players. This big stand-up comedy bit I had about being gay. And I'm like, if I can do that, like, this is peanuts. You know, oh, could you sing Reviewing the Situation for us? And we'd love you to be as marvelous as possible. I'm like, piece of cake, you know, I've just been in the lion's den. So, you know, it sort of aligned me. And the same with when I got Governors, they were like, we need a physical comedian. And I just was teaching at Erdang and was specializing in teaching a bit of clowning. I was doing that a fair bit. And I was just like, I'm ready to do this. Like, I walked in going, I've been teaching clowning for the last month, and you want someone who can be essentially a clown. So you know, there was these little serendipitous rewards for putting my creativity in the world that really made me feel armed to get these jobs. And the funny thing is, with the jobs with Oliver and with One Man, Two Governors, I could see how significant they were going to be. And I've done this with a lot of jobs where I thought, I've got to get this, which is a very dangerous position to put yourself in. But sometimes you just can't help it. But with Oliver and Governors, I was like, there is not the option of not getting this, which is deadly, which is a terrible, terrible mental thing to put yourself into. However, something about that did work. I've done it before with jobs and I haven't got them and I'm still alive. But with those jobs, anyway, you were asking me about the change. I mean, the short version is that Governors was just this enormous phenomenon. And it was part of what I was doing in it, became one of the focal things about the show that people remembered, and it made an impact. And James, you know, when we were in New York and James Corden and I were sort of nominated for the awards, it was a sort of two-man sort of representation in these award ceremonies. He said to me, he said, it won't guarantee you work, but it will guarantee you're on a different list. And that actually is true. That was true. It did just promote me onto a list to be seen by people and for certain jobs that a year before just wasn't happening. You know, I remember when I went to the audition for Mike Lee, it was the first thing I got after I came back from New York. And he was saying, oh, you must have noticed this has sort of, you know, been good for your career. And I sort of felt like saying, yeah, you're talking to me. Like, because he was sort of going, oh, have you noticed, people have been wanting to see you more. And I'm like, yeah, you, like this right now, like this, you know, you're Mike Lee, and same with Kenneth Branagh. He was like, oh, yeah, well, you must have, noticed, people being interested. I'm like, yeah, you, like, Mike Lee just said the same thing. And it was like him, anyway. But yeah, it did. And there's it's sort of, those things come and go, you have to sort of strike while the iron's hot with things like that. Those films you mentioned, Star Wars and Cinderella and Turner, they were all made in a sort of 2-year period after I came back from governance. So I'm not saying, I wouldn't get that now, but because I might be seeing things like that now, but there was this sort of afterglow when the momentum is still hot. And I think there's what that is, and then there's going back to small steps, there's all the work I've done since then, I think, has been a product of governors, but there's the sort of sustained longevity sort of aspect of it, and then there's the kind of who's hot right now, we're just going to cast this person aspect of it, and that has a kind of lifespan, I think.
I mean, I can remember, I think, meeting you. It was either before or just after, I think, the audition that you did for Two Governors. I remember you saying that, it's 1 or 2 lines, and I fall down the stairs, and I was like, hey, look, at least it's the National,
Yeah.
And then I think I was away or I was on a tour or something. And in my mind, at least, this is how I've remembered it, was, being on a train and looking online to see that you were up for, a Tony nomination. And I was like, Jesus, this is, incredible. I mean, I saw the show in London, obviously, but I was like, God, that's a huge jump. And it makes me think, I mean, one of the continual sort of struggles that comes up a lot with the people that I might see in coaching is an imposter syndrome. So
right.
They'll all mention it at some point, and irrespective of where they are and what work they've done. So, published writers saying, I don't feel like I can write. And and I guess, and everyone's got a slightly different definition of what that means for them. But it occurred to me at the time, I was like, I wonder if that's how difficult that is to step into in such what seems like a quick time. I mean, was that a difficult thing to step into? Was there some work you had to do thought-wise around, I can own this now. I'm entitled to this. I've created this in a sense. Or did you feel like, actually, no, I'd put in the work and actually I was ready to take this on when it came?
I think more, well, the focus at the time was the work. Because the work was just, and everything that was happening around it was just so enjoyable. So I didn't wrestle with that at all. I was like, this is great. I was enjoying it. There was a thing in New York where I think you thought, because the culture is so different there, like everyone was just, blowing smoke up certain orifices, and you can enjoy it, but you sort of can't believe it. You because if you start to believe it, you bang your head on something pretty quick. I mean, it was a funny one, really, because I had someone who shall remain nameless in the sort of world of that play, who was sort of maybe a bit envious or whatever. I was getting special attention. They said, you were nothing before this and you'll be nothing after. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cute. And I had to work very hard to sort of to hold that as something that was very much their projection onto me, because the thing I think that kept me, look, there was no hardship moment in my life, it was great. The tough thing is the things around it, or maybe coming out of it and the next job not being as big. And it's what is difficult sometimes is if I've jobs like that come around very seldom, and it's hard to come out and go, oh, the next job isn't going to be like that. Like, it's just not. And but the thing I think the two things I think I'll say is that one is that what I like to think is that I really sort of owned the gratitude of it. I was very, very grateful. It gave me great friends, amazing experiences, memories for a lifetime, huge amount of job satisfaction and fulfillment. And for that, I was so grateful. Anything else about dealing with a sudden change or just, that's a luxury problem. And the other thing I think I would say is that the thing that I try to hold on from it is that it completely came out of the unknown. I think the thing that I struggle with working as an actor is just this unknown. You just don't know. It doesn't matter how good your job is that you're doing at the present or that you've done in the past. You don't know what is coming next. And there's always the fear that you can, am I going to be found out, or is this it, or this is the last one, whatever. But I have to remind myself that the unknown, yes, is this source of anxiety, but equally, when I look at it dispassionately, all the things that not only went well for me, but went better for me than I could have possibly dreamed, all came out of the unknown, all of them. I had no idea Governors was around the corner. No idea, and other jobs as well, like Cyrano, the job I've just done. I didn't work for 4 months. I struck out on about 7 auditions in a row, and I thought, I've been found out. This is it. I can't get arrested. And this job just landed on my lap, out of nowhere, So the unknown actually has been very, very good to me, even though at times it feels like it's my greatest foe. Do you know what I mean? The greatest demon. Actually, it's the thing that, if you can trust in possibility, those things will look after you much more, and in ways that you don't expect. I think that's the thing. If you try and plan it all, or go into a room going, I know I just said it 10 minutes ago, but you can't go into a room and go, I'm going to make them give me this job. I mean, I don't know, I may have been contradicting myself there, but you know what I mean? There's a lot that's out of your control. I think you need to sort of own that there's things that are within your power. I think that's what's stood me, is that I've been able to go into a room and go, this is within my abilities, this is within my power, this is within my gift to do this. But it's not within your control. I can't control it, and you just hope that enough of the time these things align in your favor, but there's plenty of times they don't, and the amount of times that there's been jobs that I've really wanted to get and I haven't. Actually, I've been annoyed or upset for half an hour, and then you just got to let it go. The tense thing is between having auditioned and finding out whether you got it or not. That's the torture period. And you can try and talk yourself out of that. You can try and be all zen about it, but I don't know. That it just is how it is. Until you know you have got it, you haven't got it, and you're really invested in it, it's hard. But the minute I find out I haven't got it, I can have half an hour of moaning about it and complaining, but then after that, really holding on to it it'll just rot inside you. It'll really. There's only a couple of jobs that I missed out on that I still go, that was annoying. Actually, I think I should have got that, or I could have got that. But only a couple of things.
Something, that image of hanging on to that thing, and as it rots inside you, there's something very visceral that's true, that feels quite accurate to what it feels like.
It doesn't do anyone any good, doesn't do you any good. It doesn't, no one cares. And no, it's because you'll just build a narrative, you'll build an agreement that I'm being treated unfairly, and that's easy as pie to do. You could do that easily. I could look at all the auditions I should have got, and resent the people who got them. And, and great, where does that get me? That makes, and what energy does that actually, when I then walk into a room, what energy am I bringing in? Without meaning to, I'll have stored up a view on the world where I'll come into another audition where I'll get shafted. You know, no one wants to hire that guy. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, great.
I mean, I think
it'll be fun.
I think awareness of the narrative that you are creating is quite an important thing. For those reasons, for the reasons you say, it's that view of the world and what the expectation of it is. I wonder, I mean, you described, I think, quite accurately that the sort of highs and lows and what feels like the intensity sometimes around going for those jobs that really make a difference, or any job in a sense. But I'm interested, what outside of your work sustains you in it?
Oh, a lot. And I think that's something, you know, I always remember people saying at drama school to students, like get a life, like read books, go out, have other passions, like talk to people, like don't just be a player. Do you know what I mean? In the sort of game of it. Because people want to hire like human beings that are interesting, that have got something to say. And I think that's even more true now. You know, so I think I did have a period, well, probably still do, but I mean, you know, there is a trap where you go, work is everything. And if I'm not doing it, I'm a piece of crap and I'm worthless. And that's still a voice that comes up, absolutely. But I think I've got a better hold on going, that, like letting it pass like a rainstorm. I'm going, oh, here it comes. Yeah, this is me feeling like I've got no value because I didn't get that job or whatever. And a slightly better viewpoint on being able to go, oh, okay, that's going to pass. That's not reality. That's just a spell of bad weather, or however you want to see it. And if you want to know what my sort of hobbies are, there's plenty that I do that I really, really like the natural world and being outside and bird watching and walking a lot. In fact, you know, I often say Governors, when I did One Man to Governors, was sort of the best 2 years of my life, and it was very much to do with the job. But one of the reasons I can say that is we had a 2-week break, as you do at the National when another show you're in tandem with gets teched in. And loads of people went on holiday. There was 2 weeks, you know, we were in this big hit. Everyone was in clover. And for some reason, my husband, I think, was away. So I wasn't able to go away with my husband. So I thought, well, I'm going to go away by myself, which I hadn't done before. And anyway, blah, 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 long story short. But I did this walk on the Southwest Coastal Path between St. Ives and Penzance, which is only 4 days, but I think I took 5 days doing it. And that's one of the best things I've ever done, like ever. I loved it, by myself, camping, and it sort of grew this great, and Edden and I have been to that part of Cornwall now sort of 16 times in the years since. It's become a very special place for us. And it's I really, you know, those cliffs and the sea and some of the wild places there are really the place, sort of images I hold on to as sort of those places where I don't want anything, where everything is, you know, and even religious sort of experience almost. You know, so, and I think whatever it is for whoever, you know, whatever turns you on, whatever gives you that sense of connection, and, you know, you do have to find a place where it isn't everything, you know, because, and also this period now, who knows what my next job will be and when it will turn up. You know, so I'm looking at it, and as well as everyone, of course, looking at a long period with no work. Now, you've got to manage your mental well-being in that, and you know, you've got to find ways to do it. Anyway, yeah. So I can't remember what your question was, but there are, as I matured, I think I did go. But the gift was being able to look at my career and go, I am an actor who works and who enjoys a certain level of sense of establishment, that people know who I am, and when I walk into an audition room and I'm on a particular list. Now that was won over sort of 15 years. And in a sense, I was able to sort of just have a basic level trust in that. Don't know what the next job's going to be. Don't know, all those things are unknown. but the luck and the fortune and the work that I've put into being at a point where I got where I wanted to get to. And that is something I think I'm grateful for above everything. Because I think what's very hard is if a lot of time goes by and you haven't got to where you've said you wanted to get to. That is hard, because that you're in a conversation of going, do I keep going? Or do I look at the alternative? And you have to balance out which is more of a sacrifice, And luckily, I think I was in that question of going, do I do this? Do I keep going? Is this gonna pay off? I was in that question at an age when I think you've got just youth on your side, not in terms of casting, just in terms of being able to bounce off the hard edges of life and a sort of blind determination. And I think it's really, you've got to be determined. You've got to be determined. They're defeatist voices, of course, but I think they've got to, that analogy, that American Indian analogy of, I'm paraphrasing it, but inside every person there's two wolves, and there's a wolf of sort of negativity, let's say, and a wolf of strength and positivity. And the question is, which one wins the conflict? And you say, well, whichever one you feed. And I think there's I like that, because it's there. The negative voice is there. Can't get rid of it. It can't, it's just human. But then the trust in yourself and the trust in the possibility, that's there as well. And you've just got to turn the volume up on it. And if you only listen to the despair all the time, then yeah, it's a big effort to dance with life and allow things to happen and allow possibilities to emerge, because you're just not going to see them. You're not going to see them. I remember, am I waffling?
No. I'll call you on waffling. Yeah.
Well, in terms of and this might make me sound a bit insane. Okay. I was in Faustus, which I think you mentioned, and near the end of the job, I had an audition for Amadeus, which was a production coming up at the National Theatre, and I really wanted to get it. And it was kind of tearing me up inside, because I'd done the audition and I didn't hear whether I'd got it or not for about 8 weeks, which is quite a long time for straight theatre. A very long time. And it was to do with their casting process and whatever. It's fine. It was frustrating, but that was what it was. But in that period, as the weeks went on, and I still didn't know, and my agent can only do so much to sort of prod and pry. I was kind of going a bit crazy. I was like, oh, this is really tearing me up. I want to get this job. And I had a dream. During it, and I like analyzing dreams. I think some of them are quite powerful. I had this dream where there was this big bird, like an ostrich, but kind of like a dinosaur as well, like one of these big, bloody great birds. And it was just snapping away at me in this dream. I was like, what is that? It was very, very strong image. And I told my partner about it. I was like, what is that about? And we sort of decided that this creature was a sort of manifestation of this frustration. It was just really loud, uncomfortable to be around, and it wasn't going to go away. Like an elephant in the room, like this big, ugly, great creature that I'd sort of created. And I sort of, in a weird sort of way of trying to sort of deal with my own frustration and sort of this period of torture, I sort of held on to it. Anytime I started to really worry or get anxious, I just sort of pictured it there and sort of made friends with it and going, okay, make all the noise you like, just go for it, rack your brains, give yourself a hard time, but sort of focused on this image. And after a while, it ran out of power. Do you see what I mean? It's sort of, when the worry would come up again, I'd kind of picture it and go, this is my inner complaint or my inner fear or whatever. Anyway, I got the job, hurrah, very relieved. And as a present to myself, took myself to Vienna, because Amadeus is set in Vienna, and I was playing the emperor, and I wanted to go to the palaces, and I'd always wanted to go to Vienna, so I thought I'd give myself, I was going to be a real swot about it. Just a long weekend, didn't break the bank. And when I went to the Schönbrunn Palace, which is where my character, the Emperor Joseph, lived, I went on a walk in the gardens, in the grounds. I mean, you can tell what's going to come, but in these huge gardens, and I walked into this forest, massive grounds around this palace. And what was strange is I turned a corner and I was face to face with this fucking massive emu. It was so bizarre. And there was chicken wire between us, but I kid you not, it was in the trees and you couldn't see before you got there. I literally turned the corner, there was the chicken wire, and right in front of me was this emu, so looking at me like this, but pecking away. And I just had this moment of total serendipity of just going, oh, there you are. And I felt so grateful. I was like, I think I said thank you to it. I was like, thank you for showing yourself and getting me through this. Now that might all sound a bit poetic or a bit, but the point is, I'd put myself in a frame of mind to see the possibility, to see, if I just had that dream about the ostrich and gone, I'm not going to use that dream. I'm just going to drag myself through these weeks of torture and not have any agency to my own well-being. I wouldn't have sort of used that dream image as a kind of just one of those little stress toys. And I wouldn't have seen the serendipity, the little symbol in bumping into it in Austria. But the fact that I was, so when you talk about creating a narrative, that might all be BS. That might all be, there may be nothing to that whatsoever. But the fact that you can create a narrative where you're kind to yourself, where you can celebrate the little moments of inspiration and the little signs from the universe of going, you're all right, you're on the right path, big or small. And that was a little thumbs up that was going, you did all right there. Because that dream was some little message from my psyche that I was just hanging on to for help, I suppose, So, yeah, anyway.
I mean, what comes across there, which is something that I think sticks out quite a lot in what you've been talking
is that I look like an emu, anyway.
That you can do a very good emu, and it's been underused, I think, professionally, Tom, casting-wise.
Where's the Rod Hull musical?
But there's something in, I think, what seems like a kind of an intrinsic, natural way of thinking for you, which is around finding the possible in those little moments that might otherwise be neglected if you were to take a wider, more cynical view, and using the emu, feeding the wolf as opposed to.
Yeah, and I have to say that's a lot of that I have to owe to my husband, because I think my husband sees what I can get like, I can get into a darker space, and I think his just having that person to talk to who isn't buying it is just like, no, actually from the outside I see someone who's created a huge amount for themselves and has been very lucky, and so as a reflection, so I'm lucky, because if I was single and dealing with all that, I don't know if I'd find all of those little steps up. I don't know.
I'm not sure if you can without that kind of reflection. Finally, Tom.
My favorite color?
in a nutshell, or
yes.
less, a coconut perhaps.
2 nutshells.
Nutshells. Let's go with nutshells. Yeah. What does it mean to live well as a creative in the world today?
Oh, to live well. Well, I think there's 2 things. I think there's your own well-being, and all the things which I think we've talked about quite a lot. Managing the stress, managing the unknown, managing the tribulations and the obstacles. And I think for me, what I've always hung on to is, if what I get out of it on the spreadsheet is more than what I find trying and what I find testing and challenging, then that's the price of the ticket, you know, because I can look back and the moments of great fulfillment and the friendships and the experiences, they are things that is what it's all about. And the work. And as long as that is giving me more than the struggles with it internally are costing, then that's the price of the ticket. You know, if someone has a secure job, like an office job or whatever, a job that you know you can have for 20 years, if there is such thing, you know, the gain of that is the sense of security and the sense of knowing what you're doing. And being an actor doesn't feel secure, and it does feel uncertain, you know, and I absolutely can see why somebody would not want to tread that path, because it doesn't get easier. It's hard, you know, it's hard. But in terms of, so there's the internal well-being, but I think what your question is intimating is like being well as a creative in the world today. I think there is more of a sense of what is the integrity of what you're doing? Does what you're doing align with what you want to contribute to the world? You know, because we're talking a lot about an internal experience, but it's communal, and it is about what you're giving and the companies you're in and the plays you're in and what those productions are saying and what experience they're giving to audiences and all that. And I think having a relationship with your creativity which has integrity, I think is a pretty good start. You know, some people are going to be activists with their creativity. Some people are going to write plays and really come from a place of what they personally have to say to the world. That's never quite been my thing. You know, but for some people it is. For some people, you know, some actors will be more like me, more of a hired gun, you know, a person who wants to be in good work that they like to be aligned to. That's why I enjoy working with Jamie Lloyd so much. I love what he does, and I love the ethos of where he comes from, and it's a real pleasure to do what he does. And you feel good going to work because you know, you feel like it's a good space. I'm rambling slightly. I think integrity is a big thing. I think seeing of what you're giving as is being of service. You know, if it's all an ego trip, then, you know, it'll take you off balance, you know. And there's not a huge amount of integrity if that's the only thing. If it's all about fame or success or status or prestige, you know, if it's all for that, it's really not worth it, because you'll never fill that hole. So you've got to really like what you're doing. You've got to enjoy the work. I mean, that was a tricky point for me in my career at one point, where it felt like the jobs I was doing outside, like working in Harrods or working as a sightseeing guide or working in call centers, and I was doing this for months on end because I was going to be an actor. And then when I did get a job, I got this one job that was pretty miserable, and I didn't enjoy it. And I was like, if I'm not enjoying the work that I'm saying I'm sacrificing stuff to do, then what is this? The sums don't add up. So I think if you feel the work has integrity and value, I think that's not a bad start. There may have been something wiser and more profound I could have said there, Andy, but I think I'm not a wise or profound person. No, I think that's something, you know, you could get into. You know, I think people like to attach ideologies to certain things, and if that's your driver, then go for it. But I think I've always wanted to be of service, really, you know, without that sounding too pretentious. You do want to give, you know, that there is something about, you know, and I will finish with this because I know I'm waffling, but yes, there is the side of people who want to be an actor that is egotistical. You want attention and you want to be told you're good and all this stuff. But actually, deep down, I think there is something about being on stage with an audience in front of you. You want to serve that group of people. You want to give your best. You want to give them what you've got to give, and be of service. And if they enjoy it, and then you can look in the mirror and go, yeah, I'm in a relationship with the consumer that is mutually beneficial, and I think if that has integrity, then I think that's a pretty good position to get into. Yeah.
Tom Edden, thank you for your service. Also, just just your authenticity around, and sincerity around talking about what we've been talking about. It's been massively a learning experience for me, hearing some of the details and the different ways in which you've approached it and the different sort of decisions you've made. But I think it's profound to hear the changes that you've gone through, and how admirably you have ridden that horse, to use an
I think the other thing to say, not to waffle on, if you'll forgive me, I think one other point I would like to make is to anyone listening, is I think if you can, and you might not be able to, but if you can, don't compare yourself to anybody. I think that is such a trap. And I think when I learned that, it feels obvious when you say it. Yeah. It's like, it seems like, oh yeah, well, of course, that would be a really stupid thing to do. But we all do it. And I remember there was a time, there was a job I didn't do, and somebody told me I should have done it. And it sort of really played on my mind. And I thought, have I made the right decision? I didn't know what was going on. And I did have this sort of epiphany moment with this tree. I saw this beautiful tree in the sunset, and there was an emu on the branch. No, and there was a big tree. No, I just saw how this tree didn't grow in a regular way. It wasn't symmetrical. All the branches have these different curves and stuff. And I think that is, everyone has their own path that curves and moves and stuff. And if you look at a branch you really like and you go, I've got to be exactly like that. No branch does that. No branch goes, oh, I've got to change here and then do this and that. Each one is different, and each one has its own fruits.
Following its own light, Tom. Yeah,
but I think you do. You have to, as Oscar Wilde says, you be yourself. Everyone else is taken. It's true.
Tom Edden, thank you very much.